I'm Teisha Bader with Shalom TV's news update for Monday, March the 24th, 2014. Israel's security agency, the Shin Bet, announced today that over the last few weeks, they successfully broke up and made arrests in 2 terror cells in the West Bank. One terror cell was of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine that is suspected of being behind an attack last month on an IDF post north of Ramallah. The second cell broken up was from Nablus, suspected of being behind an attack on civilian vehicles in the West Bank. 2 suspects trying to cross into Israel from the border with Egypt were shot at today by the IDF after ignoring warnings to stop. IDF forces patrolling the border identified the 2 and called on them to move back from the border fence. Those orders were ignored, and ultimately the soldiers opened fire, hitting one suspect who was climbing up the fence in the leg. He then retreated back into the Egyptian side. The other suspect ran into the Israeli side and was captured by IDF forces. He was now being questioned by them. 2 Israeli border police officers were moderately wounded yesterday near Rachel's tomb near Bethlehem. The soldiers were hit by stones being thrown at them during a Palestinian demonstration at the site. They were taken to Hadassah Ein Kerem Hospital in Jerusalem for treatment. This attack follows clashes the previous day on Saturday in Jenin when Israeli forces, including members of the Shin Bet, the IDF, and Border Police Counterterrorism Unit, conducted an overnight counter-terrorism raid in the West Bank city. The forces went into Jenin late Saturday to arrest a Palestinian man wanted for planning attacks against Israeli civilians and soldiers. The suspect barricaded himself in his home and refused the IDF's calls for his surrender. He then opened fire on the soldiers, lightly injuring 2 of them, and tried to escape. IDF forces returned fire and shot and killed the man. In clashes that followed, Israeli security forces also killed 2 armed Palestinian rioters who were firing on them and throwing firebombs, rocks, and explosives at the troops. In what appears to be the latest price tag attack, over 30 vehicles in the East Jerusalem Arab neighborhood of Beit Hanina were vandalized today. Israel Radio reports that the tires of 34 cars were slashed and racist graffiti reading "Gentiles in the country are enemies" was sprayed on the side of a minibus. Israel police were investigating the incident. So-called price tag attacks are assumed to be carried out by Jewish right-wing extremists, randomly targeting Palestinians and sometimes the IDF as well, in protest of the Israeli government's policies in the settlements or of Palestinian terror. A Jewish teacher in Paris was brutally beaten last week in what appears to be an anti-Semitic attack. The teacher was wearing a kippah and was attacked leaving a kosher restaurant Thursday night. His attackers broke his nose and drew a swastika on his chest with a black marker, and also reportedly shouted anti-Semitic slurs at him in French and in Arabic. The American Jewish Committee reacted to the beating attack. This past Thursday, AJC France Director Simon Rodan Ben-Saken said they were confident that French authorities would fully investigate and bring to justice the perpetrators responsible for the attack. But she added there is also a larger and longer-term challenge, taking concerted action to address the roots of anti-Semitism and prevent this vicious cancer from growing in France. She said this must be a government priority, ever mindful that anti-Semitism poses a threat both to the largest Jewish community in Europe and to the very fabric and fiber of France's laudable democratic values. The attack on the teacher came 1 day after France commemorated the Toulouse massacre, in which a rabbi and 3 children were murdered in 2012. At the commemoration ceremony, French Prime Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault and Interior Minister Manuel Valls reaffirmed the government's commitment and determination to combat anti-Semitism in France. Valls acknowledged that anti-Semitism in the country had grown in recent years. He said what is new is an anti-Semitism that feeds on hatred of Israel and Zionism. He said criticism of Israel that is based on anti-Zionism, that's anti-Semitism today, is the refuge of those who do not accept the State of Israel. AJC Executive Director David Harris lauded Valls' message. He said it was a clear recognition of the present malicious campaign against Israel and its very right to exist. Harris said at a time when some French Jews are feeling increasingly uncomfortable, it is encouraging to hear such profound empathy and support from the country's interior minister. The Jerusalem Post reports that 5 anti-Israel resolutions were heard today at the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva. The resolutions focus on claims of Israeli human rights violations in East Jerusalem, the West Bank, Gaza, and the Golan Heights, and calls on member states to make sure that businesses under their jurisdiction do not conduct business in or related to the settlements. And UNHRC Special Rapporteur on the Palestinian territories, Richard Falk, who is known for his anti-Israel views, was also expected to deliver a report at the council meeting today, urging the UN to ask the International Court of Justice at The Hague to issue an advisory as to whether Israel's, quote, occupation of Palestinian territories meets the legal standard of, quote, colonialism, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing. Israel was not represented at the UNHRC meeting today because of a strike now in effect of its foreign ministry. The Jerusalem Post notes in its report that as opposed to the 5 anti-Israel resolutions being debated today, during the UNHRC's entire 25th session this month, it is voting on only 1 resolution on Syria, despite its ongoing civil war, and only 1 resolution against Iran. We've been reporting to you about the vote held last week by the Student Senate at Loyola University in Chicago, which unanimously passed, calling on the school to divest from 8 companies doing business with Israel, a vote initiated by the Students for Justice in Palestine in the latest effort of the BDS, or Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, which seeks to delegitimize the State of Israel. Well, now the Jewish community is getting involved to try and overturn that vote. Student paper The Loyola Phoenix reports that the Jewish United Fund's Israel Education Center and Metro Chicago Hillel met after the vote with President of the United Student Government Association, Pedro Guerrero, who has now invited pro-Israel students to present their position at the next meeting, which takes place tomorrow, after which Guerrero will decide whether to uphold or veto the resolution by the Student Senate. Loyola has said that the resolution is student-proposed and not the position of the school. They said in a statement, as a university, we welcome open dialogue and debate on differing points of view. Proposals like this one benefit from broader campus discussion. Jewish artists from around the world are gathering in Garrison, New York this week for the 2nd annual International Jewish Artist Retreat, a global meeting of visual artists, playwrights, musicians, choreographers, composers, poets, and writers. The organization is Asylum Arts, which was launched by the Schusterman Philanthropic Network with the goal of enhancing Jewish engagement. Additional support for Asylum Arts is provided by the Genesis Philanthropy Group and Righteous Persons Foundation. Schusterman Family Foundation Chair Lynn Schusterman said the initiative was a one-of-a-kind opportunity for young Jewish artists to build strong relationships and together create ways to connect young Jews to the Jewish community through arts and culture. She said, I believe young people hold the key to building a vibrant global Jewish future, and we must invest in their passion and potential to do so. And turning to our Shalom TV programming for tonight, Monday, March the 24th, a new segment of the Wisdom of Dr. Ruth Westheimer is coming up at 7 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, from the recent 10th anniversary Limud Conference, a program on the book Kaddish, Women's Voices, with its creators and contributors, Michal Smart, Barbara Ashkenaz, Meryl Gordon, and Rachel Jubas. And then First Female Orthodox Rabbi Sarah Hurwitz joins Mark Golub on L'chaim at 9 o'clock. That's all coming up tonight here on Shalom TV and ShalomTV.com.
Creating and graduating women who
And that's Shalom TV's news update for Monday, March the 24th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader.